Hey everyone, this is smpratte, and today we're going to talk about Pokemon card reprints. So reprints aren't actually that common of occurrence in this hobby. However, for the more popular species or more popular cards, there are a decent amount of reprints. So in this video, we're going to focus primarily on the base set Charizard and Pikachu as a whole, because between two of them, they probably share the most reprints in the entire hobby. So beginning with the basics, what is a reprint? That is probably best illustrated between the recent CP6 Charizard and the original 1996 base set Charizard. So these two cards in my hand are 20 years apart. You probably can't tell from this distance which is which. However, the dead giveaway are the backs of the cards. So this one is the 1996 with the old Japanese back, and this is the 2016 with the new Japanese back. There are a few other subtle differences between these two. The 2016 version has a greater HP and attack. Also, the text is subtly different, but by and large, this is about as one-to-one as you will get for a reprint. This is about as identical as it's going to get. So it's been 20 years, and this is the most identical reprint for the Japanese base set Charizard. The one question I think a lot of people worry about, or perhaps ask themselves, is the original versus the reprint. How much is the original worth versus the reprint? Is it more collectible than the reprint, or vice versa? Is the reprint going to be more valuable, etc.? Is it going to be more popular? In my opinion, a reprint is like a clone, and it has a half-life. The reprints, to me, never have the same trajectory or inertia as the original. The original has the fact that it's the original, it's got the inertia of its history and its origin, its story behind its release, where a reprint is literally just mimicking that. Especially with something like CP6. It's one-to-one, completely mimicking the original base set release. However, there is a positive to reprints. I think a lot of people, especially collectors who own the original cards, they definitely don't like reprints. In my opinion, I'm indifferent, slightly on the side, especially Pokemon, because these cards are not too pricey. The original is not too pricey. So for me, I'm not in favor of most reprints. However, the silver lining, or the optimistic aspect, is it brings a lot of new people into the hobby. So for example, Evolutions, the reprinted artwork in there brought a lot of new people back. So that reprint of the Charizard base set was a vehicle for a lot of older collectors to get back in the game. And I think what it does is it stimulates them to buy the older sets as well. So there's probably a lot of people who got Evolutions and now like, hey, I'm gonna go get the original. Especially for the price point of Unlimited, it's not that expensive, you might as well. So that's probably the main positive aspect of reprints, is it might tap into a new audience, or perhaps an old audience that, you know, strayed away from the hobby, and it brings them back in. But with that said, let's take a close look at the cards I have behind me so you can get a good understanding of what these actual reprints look like. So starting with the Japanese that I showed you in front of the camera earlier, this is the 1996 base set to the left, the original, and to the right is the 2016 reprint. And from a quick glance, they almost look 100% identical. However, you can see the difference in attack. The 2016 is 200 versus the original is 100, and then the HP is different as well. Also, you can see the energies are slightly different. The bottom text and setup is slightly different as well. But the overall layout is very, very similar. So this would be your classic identical reprint. Of course, again, the most significant difference is the back of the cards. The original is to the left from 1996, and there's the new back. So moving on to English, things get a little bit more interesting, at least for the base set Charizard artwork. So even within the one set of base set, you have two entirely different templates. So the one on the left is the original Charizard Shadowless card. The one on the right is the 1999 base set Unlimited Charizard card. So right off the bat, you can probably tell the wings are a different color. The Unlimited is more of a blue aqua color, where the Shadowless is more of a green color. Also, the text is slightly different. You can see Fire Spin's a little smaller than on the right. The energies are slightly different. They're a little darker on the Shadowless. The HP is a little thinner on the Shadowless. Also, the background of Charizard, there's black lines, where on Shadowless it's more purple. And then lastly, the most significant designation on each is the shadowed border on the Unlimited. You can see that shadow there next to Charizard, where on Shadowless, of course, there is no shadow. Thus the name Shadowless. So even within that same year of release, you can see the two big differences between these cards. Ultimately, we are collecting artwork as collectors, therefore the aesthetics do matter, and especially with a difference like this, it is subtle, but it's noticeable. and therefore you see a difference in price point, collectability, and everything else related. So moving on to evolutions, you can see again the artwork is a carbon copy. It's the same Mitsuhiro Arita original artwork of base set Charizard. However, interestingly enough, this looks more like the Japanese Charizard coloring, in my opinion. It looks less like the Unlimited. So that's one subtle difference. I don't know if that will really affect the value if most people really pay attention that critically to that aspect. However, you can tell the layout is definitely different. The border is different. The text is and setup is different. They tried to mimic it as much as they could, but the difference with English is that these are two entirely different companies. So these two cards were printed by Wizards of the Coast. This card was printed by Nintendo, where in the instance of the Japanese, these were both printed by the same company, Media Factory. And then next to the evolutions, we have the Stormfront Charizard, which, in my opinion, this is what I prefer for a reprint. It's not a one-to-one reprint. However, you can see the artwork is a nod to the original Charizard base set artwork. Also, the HP is the same. The attack's the same. This card was made in reference of the base set Charizard. But, of course, the artwork is similar, yet different. So, in my opinion, I do prefer this a little bit more because it gives you something different to collect. If you just keep pumping out this same artwork with different hollow foil patterns, lightning bolts or whatever in the background, to me that's not as creative, it's not as enticing for a collector. However, I think something like Stormfront pops a little bit more for people, and I think the price point reflects that as well. This is a little bit more collectible. And I'm not sure the longevity yet of evolutions, but Stormfront is for sure more collectible at the moment compared to the evolutions. And of course, there's a difference in rarity there, so it's not a one-to-one analogy. And then lastly, I have the Secret Wonders Charizard. So in Secret Wonders, they took some of the original base set cards from back here, and they tried to make them playable by adjusting the attacks, but keeping them somewhat similar. So this is probably not the best parallel example. However, the attacks are similar to the original Charizard. I think the Blastoise was probably one of the more similar ones, if I can remember correctly. But the bottom line is this is definitely the furthest, the other end of the spectrum, if you will, from something that's a one-to-one reprint. This is something that has a similar idea, but the artwork is different. The only thing really similar is just that it echoes these cards, but it's its own card. So that's probably the other end of the spectrum of the one-to-one reprint. And now let's take a look at the Pikachu cards. Actually, these I had on hand just sitting on my desk, and I'll show you this base set, the difference in the base set reprints. So the base set Pikachu is hands down the most reprinted artwork in the hobby. This is the Stormfront artwork again. And you can see the difference between the original base set artwork and then this reprinted. It's a nod. It's not a one-to-one. However, Pikachu has so many reprints. I'm going to try to get through most of them and just show you, why one is more valuable than the other, and basically illustrate that the original is always going to be worth more. So these top three cards right here are the originals in respect to their release. So the Red Cheek First Edition Shadowless is the first ever base set Pikachu card released in English. Here's the Yellow Cheek variant, still within the first edition print run. And then right here we have the Red Cheek Shadowless E3. So the Red Cheek E3 was the first release, and here is the second release, which is not Shadowless, and it does not have the Red Cheek. And I think we all know which one is more valuable. Definitely the Red Cheek variant. I believe it's also more difficult to obtain, but the bottom line is, again, the original is still more valuable than the subsequent reprint. So the first edition Red Cheek is going to be more valuable than the Shadowless, definitely more valuable than the Shadowless Yellow Cheek, and then for sure more valuable than the Yellow Cheek Unlimited. And moving through the Pikachu artworks, there are multiple examples of reprints and how reprints work and how they do not. I think this is probably one of the best examples I can think of a Pikachu reprint. You have the original Koro version right here to the left, and then to the right you have the Mount Fuji 1997 JR Rally version. I prefer the one on the right. It's probably my favorite Surfing Pikachu illustration because it has that subtle alteration of Mount Fuji in the background as well as the JR Rally train. It ties into its release. The artwork ties into the release. It's also unique, limited print, therefore highly collectible. And you can see here's another example of Surfing Pikachu, again from the DP era. Pretty much the exact same artwork as the first CoroCoro release. And another good example of a reprint that's done right, in my opinion, Japanese does the best reissue of cards, or echoes ideas the best of their artwork. So right here we have the original Birthday Pikachu from 1998. Of course, it was reprinted in English. There's one of the variants. However, the Not Awake Pikachu, which was the same card in that it had the same HP, same attack, same idea, but entirely different artwork. And you can see this is much more collectible than simply reprinting the same art. And I love how Japan does this. You got the same concept, Birthday Pikachu, different artwork, makes it more collectible. Another subtle example is the JR Rally 2002 Pikachu. The one on the right was similar to the 1997 in its release. It was released through the JR Rally campaign. The one on the left is the 2002 Festa Pikachu. The exact same background. Everything is the same, HP, attack, except the only difference is Pikachu is drawn differently in the Festa than in the JR Rally release. So hopefully that gives you a good understanding of reprints in the hobby, the range of one-to-one reprints to the more subtle reprints, moving on to, artwork that's echoed, to something that's entirely different. You have the same background, different artwork, or completely different artwork in the case of Birthday Pikachu. So those are just a good, quick example of the range of reprints in this hobby. There are others. Of course, some that are more subtle than others, but hopefully this gives you a good grasp of the general concept of what a reprint looks like. And again, in my opinion, reprints do not have the same value as the original. Going back to the original Birthday Pikachu, this Japanese Birthday Pikachu, way more valuable than the reprinted English. So there you have it. As usual, if you have any questions, let me know. Till next time.